Your buses were on time and efficient. Your buses were clean and well-run and friendly. The government controlled your prices. The government sicked the cops after you because you weren't allowed to drive on roads that they were allowed to drive on. Am I getting this story right?
Yes, and by the way, I was the one who wrote about transit lanes, encouraging that we have transit lanes. And I had visited out in California where I bought some buses, and, you know, I learned some things out there that they were doing good, and I thought we could do them in Minneapolis. And so when they did complete the transit lanes on the Nicollet Mall, I wrote a letter complimenting for that and applying to run our buses on the mall. And it was natural for us to run on the mall because the Twin City Lines buses at that time they ran on the Nicollet Mall, and they ran out Minnetonka Boulevard to Texas Avenue, and then they turned off. But we ran out Minnetonka Boulevard and beyond Texas Avenue all the way out through Hopkins and Deep Haven, Greenwood, Shorewood, Excelsior, and on to Tonka Bay and Chanhassen. So it was just a natural for us to be on the Nicollet Mall. So if somebody's asking somebody in Dayton's store, well, where do we catch a bus that goes out to St. Louis Park or Minnetonka Boulevard, it would be the same for us as it would be for the Twin City Lines. It's confusing to put us on different streets downtown.
So ultimately, did they not allow you to drive anymore?
Well, like what I told you, this driver named Tucson Starks, he got his own tickets. And by the way, he's passed away a long time ago now, and his wife has stopped to see me, and she's even pulled weeds in one of the gardens, knowing my wife is gone.
It's amazing to hear how close all your staff is and that you still stay in touch. It really is a family.
But Tucson Starks went to court, and he won that battle for us. And then that was all over with, you know.
They stopped writing you tickets?
Right, yeah. It was Judge Sedgwick who, I never knew Judge Sedgwick, but I understand that she passed away from cancer, you know. The judges I dealt with, you know, I never knew them before and never knew them since. Well, there was a Judge Kalina who might be living today, I hope he is, and he's the one that handled the case when I challenged the MTC on constitutional grounds that they could control our fares, you see, because they competed with us. And
how many lawsuits did you have with them?
Well, that was the one big one, and then they had condemned us because we raised the fares, and that was Judge Barbo, I remember. And it doesn't mean he was a bad judge. I mean, I don't even remember what Judge Barbo looked like, but then when I refused to stop running the buses, I was charged with contempt of court. And my father, who was a very smart man, who served in the military twice and often wished he could have been an advisor to the President of the United States, and I think we would have ended all wars. And he advised me just how to handle the case. And I did what my dad advised me to do, and it happened to be a Judge Kalina, and it was a 2-week thing in court, and I started out without an attorney even, and I hired an attorney named Al Hall, who happened to have been a Mormon bishop, and then he got the Grannis and Grannis firm in St. Paul involved, and so it was a very expensive court trial.
They usually are. And
then it took 6 months for the judge to come up with a decision, and that we were right. It was unconstitutional for this to regulate our fares. And the MTC was charging 50 cents for a route from the Opportunity Workshop. And they wouldn't let us raise to 50 cents, but they were collecting 50 cents from Richfield. And
one set of rules for them, and another set of rules for private business.
And so what I did is our buses were coming in from the western suburbs, and to head out to Opportunity Workshops was just convenient for us with empty buses. Now we could fill our buses if the MTC would give us authority to do that. Well, I applied for that, and we had two-way radios, which they didn't have at the time, just in case somebody, you know, got an epileptic attack or something on the bus, which happened with some of these people. We'd have quick service for them. Well, they wouldn't give me permission, so we started picking the people up anyway, and the people liked our service so well, they ended up with one passenger.
Oh.
And so we ended up with four bus loads of passengers. That's over 200 each way. That's over 400 fares a day, and at 50 cents a fare, and that was a lot of money then. We took in over $200 a day, which allowed me to increase our wages. And so it went really good, and then another bus company turned one of their routes over to us too, and we really built that one. Somehow or other, you know, the type of equipment we used and the type of drivers we had and so forth, and all of that company had good drivers too. But our business really did thrive, and then Rochester had learned about the service we gave and requested us to provide service down there, and after their service had completely quit in 1966, we started down there fresh with just 7 buses, and that grew and grew, and we did that without government financing also until...
What? You did your business without government financing?
Right. And we paid for the permits and the license plates and the whole works, you know, just like Twin City Lines did.
It's almost unheard of. You have business after business with their hands out for a new stadium, for a new, you name it, what they want.
Yeah, it's really difficult to understand if what I recommended at the time when Rochester started having federal government money earmarked for the bus system there, I said, well, put in benches and put in shelters and do everything, but don't own a bus company or run the buses. And they agreed, and that's the way they wanted it. But as time went on, there got to be such a huge amount of money out there that they just felt they had to spend it. And that's the time we probably should have withdrawn from running the city lines, because now because the federal government puts so much money in, they think they own it and they can dictate. So,
you were telling me about an interesting comment that your wife had written that you just found about founding your bus company.
On that note, she wrote on a prison fellowship paper, and I didn't know she'd given money to the prison fellowship that year. And it said, "We refuse to sell out for big money." Now that would have been before 9/11. Several companies wanted to buy us out, big companies, which are now owned. And then she went on to say, because we care for our employees, our customers, and our country. And then she said, we were right, because now our companies would be owned by the British, controlled by the international bankers. And see, now we suffer for it. But with the help of Almighty God, we will succeed or overcome, something like that. And Dr. Joseph Ioffe came over from Russia, and he called me in 1978 or 79 on the telephone, and he passed away over a year ago now. And he said on the telephone, he'd been reading about all the problems we had fighting to stay in business, and he said it real slow and real broken. He said, "George, I come from Russia, I come from socialism, I come from communism, I come to America, and what do I find? More socialism. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned, hard-working America? You, George, doctor of transportation." You know, I could never forget those words. And he and I stayed friends all through the years. I remember taking he and his wife down to the Mayo Clinic when our grandson was a baby. That's Dan's first child. And she met Dan and the family, and she held that little baby, but she did pass away. His wife passed away, and my wife, Marilyn, and I went to the funeral, and we stayed friends all through these years. And Joe's son had started a business over in Burnsville, and he was making some small electrical components that used a lot of copper wire. And so Joseph told me his son, this is before Joseph passed away, that his son was closing the business down. He couldn't compete with the foreign market. And he had things to sell he thought I might be interested in. So I bought several $100s worth of things in really nice shape. You don't owe me anything. You were so good to my father. Doctor of Transportation. Yeah, and that was Dr. Joseph Ioffe from Russia. And I have pamphlets that he had written that I have on hand. Because he wrote a pamphlet that said after 9/11, we are safer, but we are not safe. That was a pamphlet, and I remember taking them around to printers to get that printed.